今天晚上给您推荐的是我们去年其实就一直在帮助我们多位学生获得了很好信息的文书的这方面的这个专家。他首先 Arienne 呢，他是哥伦比亚大学西文系的硕士，同时他还是英属哥伦比亚大学 UBC 法学的 GD， 所以他的 past career 既是 lawyer 也是一个 journalist， 所以他的写作是非常非常详实的。同时他们家还是一个写作世家。那今天晚上呢，他会非常 targeted 跟我们孩子们分享主文书如何避雷，怎么写，什么不要写，了解你的读者，就是你的 evaluator 招生官，他们希望通过文书看到什么，how to brainstorming 找到这个文书的这个 topic。如果我现在在说中文哈，一会儿这个 Arienne 就会 focus on this obviously in English， 所以慢慢我们马上就回到 Arienne 这边来开始我们的分享。Okay, Arienne, now the floor goes to you. You can start your presentation tonight. Let me stop sharing. Now it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia, for the introduction. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see the slides?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I hope everyone's summer is going well. Summer is the perfect time to be working on your personal statement before you get swamped with all of your new courses for the fall. So I hope to cover everything that you need to know to write a successful, and effective personal statement. So how important is the personal statement? I probably can't emphasize it enough. It's extremely important. I want you to think about all the things that you've done to get yourself up to this point. Think about the time and effort and money that you've spent on your schoolwork, maybe tutoring, test preparation courses, all of your extracurricular activities, community service. There's a lot of time and effort has gone into getting you to where you are today. And maybe you're feeling pretty confident because you've got good grades, great test scores, a long list of activities. But the fact is that this is just not enough to get you noticed by admissions officers at the top colleges. And because of this, you really need to focus on the personal statement. Remember that there are thousands and thousands of other students who have been doing the same things that you have. They've been working hard and they've been doing just as much as you have. And all of those things you've been doing are important. But the fact is that admissions officers have so many applications and so little time for each one. So your personal statement needs to get your application noticed so that admissions officers will see what a great applicant you really are. So please give it the time and attention that it deserves. How much time? Well, whatever you're thinking, probably twice as much. It's really that important. And hopefully you're not too busy this summer so you can actually give it the time that it needs. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what the personal statement is and is not. So first of all, the personal statement is not a writing sample. Admissions officers are not reading your personal statement to judge your writing ability. They're reading it to get to know you. Yes, you want to write clearly, but the primary purpose of it is not to be a sample of your writing. Your personal statement is not an academic essay. So just the same way the admissions officers are not trying to judge your writing, they're also not in the business of critiquing your knowledge about any topic or your ability to construct a well-supported thesis. This is not what they're interested in. They're in the business of critiquing applicants, and you have to keep that in mind. That's the focus. The personal statement is not a creative writing assignment. And I see so many students who mistakenly believe that they need to use creative writing techniques. They think they need scenes and dialogue and things like that. Those things are fine if they help the reader to understand who you are without using up too much space. But unless you're applying to be a creative writing major, your personal statement does not need to read like it belongs in a literary journal. So if there aren't any great scenes in the story you want to tell, and if you don't have dialogue, don't worry about it. That's not what you need to have. I frequently see students using anecdotes that are way too long, or maybe the event they're describing happened so long ago that, to be honest, it's just not that relevant to an admissions officer. They really don't care what happened to you when you were 8 years old, unless it was supremely important in, setting you on a particular path for the rest of your life. Sometimes the anecdotes that people use are just not important enough. So you need to keep in mind it's not a creative writing assignment. The final thing that I really want to emphasize is that the personal statement is not an opportunity to talk about your achievements. I'm sorry, parents. I know you want to brag about the great achievements that your kids have done, but students, if your essay is about something that your parents would brag about to their friends or to your relatives, don't write about that topic. And parents, in case you're concerned, there is a time and place for bragging. And bragging is best left to the people who are going to write letters of recommendation for your child. It's always more effective to have somebody else do the bragging for them. So their accomplishments are going to get noticed, but the personal statement is not the place to do that. Okay, so now that we've talked about what it's not, let's talk about what the personal statement is. Okay, it's your best opportunity to show your personality, to tell admissions officers what makes you tick, who you are as a person and what you value, and to catch the admissions officer's attention and make them fall in love with you. So I want you to think about it this way. Imagine you're developing a product to sell to consumers, let's say a new kind of cereal. Would you spend all of your time and money developing the best, most nutritious or tastiest cereal and then decide to put it in a plain brown box? Would you put it in a box that looks the same as dozens of other boxes on the shelf? I'm sure you know the answer, and it's obvious. Of course you wouldn't do that. Well, you need to remember that you are the product, and the personal statement is your packaging. At this stage of the process, your product has already been designed and manufactured. You've done all of the things that make you the applicant that you are today. The task now is for you to find a way to package yourself effectively. And that's what your personal statement is going to do. So you might be wondering, what's more important, the writing or the topic? And what I see is that students typically spend a lot of time writing and revising and tinkering with their personal statements, but they spend very little time actually thinking, reflecting, and contemplating what to write about. And my advice to all of you out there tonight is do the opposite. Why? Because if your topic isn't great, it doesn't matter how perfectly you've written the essay. It's just not going to be effective. People aren't going to read it, or it's not going to get you in the yes pile to get you admitted to colleges where you want to go. There's also another reason to spend more time in brainstorming, trying to find the best topic. And that's because the more time you spend brainstorming, the easier it's going to be to actually write the essay. When you find the right topic, it will flow so much more easily, and the way to structure it, and it will be a much simpler task. I promise you that. Now, a lot of students wonder when they have to think about how to approach the Common App essay. They look at the prompts, they think about how they can answer them, and then they choose the prompt that would be easiest for them to answer. Now, I understand why. It's kind of like if you were given a homework assignment and you have choices, or it's an exam and they say, please answer one of the following essays. But that's not necessarily the best way to go about it in this situation. This is an application essay, which is an entirely different beast. You should use the prompts as a brainstorming tool and not as an assignment. You could also skip them entirely. And I have to tell you that when I work with students one-on-one, we almost never talk about the actual prompts until the student is completely done with their personal statement and they're just deciding how to submit it, which box they should submit it under. Having said that, it's perfectly okay to use the prompts, but use them just as a tool to help you in your brainstorming. So how would you do this? Well, you can look over all the prompts. You can make notes on how you would answer each one, and read over your answers and see if there are any common threads. Again, it's not an assignment. So even if you were, let's say, answering one particular prompt, it doesn't mean you have to have answered all of the sub-questions and everything specifically asked under that prompt, but just use it as a tool to think about things you might want to talk about. if there's something that works. However, don't assume that your essay is actually going to answer any one of those prompts. It just doesn't need to. What you need to do is write the best personal statement you can, and that may not be one that answers one of these prompts. Now, you might be wondering, how do you brainstorm? And it's not obvious because most of the time you actually don't have to do that. So let's just talk a little bit about it. Brainstorming involves asking yourself questions, thinking about the answers, asking more questions, looking for connections, and then you keep doing the cycle over and over again until the questions and the answers start to gel around specific themes. And you start to see, what kind of a person are you really? And why do you like the things you like, and what makes you tick? And as that starts to happen, then you'll start to get ideas for what your personal statement needs to be about. So here are some of the questions you can ask yourself. What do you like to do just for fun, or because it's interesting to you? So I'm not thinking about your schoolwork and your courses, not the extracurricular activities you do, but things outside of that have no resume value. But what do you like to read about? What do you like to do? Do you have any unusual hobbies or skills? What is your most prized possession and why? Do you collect anything? Is there anything unusual about your background that gives a different perspective than other students? Now, the reason that I mentioned that is that colleges care very much about having a diverse student body. They want a wide range of viewpoints and opinions. And if there's something unusual in your background or your experiences, that can add something to the classroom discussion. So in a lot of students, that's not the case. But if it is, think about it, because that's definitely something that admissions officers are on the lookout for and care about. And when you're in the previous questions, when you're thinking about your interests and hobbies, you remember you have to ask yourself, why do those things interest you? If there are a bunch of different things that you like or topics, are there any common themes? Are there of why you like the things that you like, or why you have the habits that you have? Was there any key event or detail in your background that has significantly shaped you into the person you are today? There may or may not be, but think about that, because in some cases there are, and that may be the important thing to write about in your personal statement. What are your fundamental personality traits? What sort of a person are you? And when you're asking these questions, I want you to try not to judge yourself. There are no right answers. And I want you not to try and censor them or try and answer questions in a way that you think admissions officers will like. The bottom line is you need to keep it real. The authenticity and sincerity, those are the things that are going to make for an effective essay. If you try and write the things that you think people want to hear, it's going to come through and it's going to sound fake and not sincere. So you need to keep it real. Who are you really? Because that's what the admissions officers want to know. And that's what you want to get across in your personal statement. Okay, so there are definitely some topics that you should avoid writing about. For example, avoid writing about your elderly relative who was sick or has died. And why should you avoid this? Well, because so many people have had similar experiences, and it's going to be super hard for you to write anything that's interesting or unique. And for much the same reason, avoid writing about how you won or didn't win the game or competition. Doesn't matter whether it was a sport or academic quiz bowl or a debate competition. It's the same. Too many people have had the same sort of experience and will have similar things to say, and it will be just too difficult to say something unique. Avoid writing about how you travel to a foreign country and learn to appreciate other cultures or the challenges of people who have less than you do. The problem with that sort of essay, and many people write those, is that one, it makes you look too privileged, and that's not helpful. And it also has a tendency, it's too easy to sound condescending, and that's not going to be helpful either. And the final topic to avoid, and this won't be too surprising, is that you should avoid any topic that sounds like you're trying to impress the admissions officer. Remember, as I said before, you don't want to brag. It's not going to be helpful. So what makes a good topic? Well, a good topic is going to be unique and interesting. So if we think back to the cereal analogy, there's no point trying to sell a cereal that's similar to half a dozen ones that are already on the shelf. You want to show something new and different. A good topic is going to fit into the overall picture that your application is creating. So your packaging needs to match your product. If you're writing your personal statement about how you love to write short stories and poetry, but your application is full of STEM courses and you're applying to be a computer science major, the admissions officer is not going to understand. Unless you can explain some connection about how these things fit, it won't make sense. So you want your package to fit the product. Your topic should not repeat information that's already in your application elsewhere. So you can think of your grades, your test scores, your achievements and activities, kind of like the nutrition facts and ingredients on the side panel of the cereal box. And you don't want to repeat all those things on the front of the package. In fact, just as a general rule, every piece of your application should tell the reader something new about you. If there's nothing new in there and it's just repeating stuff, then don't do it. You're just taking attention away from other important bits. You're giving away an opportunity to tell them something new. That's why I often suggest lots of students like to add as many documents as possible. They want to submit a resume. If the college doesn't specifically ask for it, it's not helpful to add it because it's going to repeat information that's already in there. And it's just not interesting. It will bore the admissions officer. They will stop reading. Finally, a good topic is going to say something meaningful about who you are as a person. So there may be lots of unique, maybe even interesting things about you that just aren't meaningful. For instance, you could have double jointed fingers. Your favorite food could be garlic ice cream. I mean, these things might be very unique, but are they really meaningful? Do they say something that that addresses some fundamental part of who you are and something that's important? And if it doesn't, then it's not the right topic. Even if it's funny or interesting, it has to be meaningful so that it's actually capturing the essence of who you are. So let's talk about some examples of things that can make good topics. Unusual interests or hobbies that connect to a fundamental aspect of your goals and personality. I've had students write successfully about surfing, orchestral conducting, even picking locks. But the reason that these topics worked for these students was that those particular activities and hobbies actually were connected to something fundamental about their goals or personality. Unexpected interest can work. For example, a student suffering from anxiety and paranoia whose favorite YouTube channel features a woman who gives makeup tutorials while discussing gruesome true crime stories. Well, it was definitely unique, interesting, and it was unexpected because this was somebody who was very anxious about crime, and yet here they were getting comforted by true crime stories. So that was the sort of thing that made for an interesting and effective essay. Treasured objects or collections. It could be vintage books, baseball cards, travel mementos, or really anything at all that you find worthy of collecting. And these things can work because they reveal something about who you are. The types of things that you like to collect or the things you spend time on reveal something personal about you. An event or aspect of a student's background that has significantly shaped the person they've become. This could be something in your family history, it could be something in your environment. These can work too, but they have to rise to the level of having a substantial impact on the person you've become. And it helps if the particular event or thing in your environment is a little bit unusual. If your childhood and your background and environment are pretty ordinary, then that's probably not going to work. Now, I also understand that it can be very difficult for high school students to recognize what adults find interesting about them. And I encourage you, because of that, to run your ideas by an adult who is knowledgeable about college admissions. It can be super helpful. In most cases, the types of topics that my students have settled on are not things that they would have thought of immediately right away by themselves, or things that they would have thought somebody else would find interesting. So definitely consult other people and get feedback. But the ultimate question that you have to ask yourself when you're deciding on a topic is could some other student be writing a similar essay? That's the most important question. If the answer to that is yes, some other student could write a similar essay, then don't write about that topic. You want to write the essay that only you can write, because that's the one that's going to capture what's unique about you, and that's what can make you a strong applicant. Okay, so once you have picked a topic and you feel pretty good about it, it's checking all the boxes and things we've discussed. How about the writing? What should you do about that? Application essays are tricky for most students, even the ones who are good writers, because it's a type of writing that you don't have to do for school. It's personal, it's introspective, and it's not formal, and it can be difficult to capture the right tone. You don't want to sound like you're bragging, but at the same time, you don't want to make yourself sound awful either. You're not going to highlight your weaknesses. So here are some things to keep in mind. The application essays should not be too formal. It's okay to use contractions. In fact, that sounds a little bit more natural. And I hope I don't have to tell you what a contraction is, because that would be a problem too. But it's fine to use contractions by all means. On the other hand, avoid using academic sounding words. So things like however, thus, therefore. Don't use words like that. These are not words you would use if you were having a conversation with a friend. And you want a more conversational tone in your application essay. Now, not conversational to the point where you're going to use curse words or bad grammar or anything like that, but a more casual tone and something that can capture your personality. A little humor is fine, things like that. And even occasionally a little bit of slang, but not if we're going into the cursing or inappropriate language. Okay, one piece of advice on the writing that I think a lot of students definitely need is skip the introduction. 650 words is so short, and this essay needs to do so much. You have only 650 words to really capture who you are, and 650 words is nothing. You cannot afford to waste even one sentence. So although you've spent most of your time in school working on having the right structure to your essays, and introductions are important to set the scene or give context, in an application essay, no. Jump right in, dive right in and grab their attention. Don't bother with laying out an introduction. For similar reasons, you need to avoid lengthy anecdotes. There is just not enough space to capture everything you need to capture and have enough room to reflect and explain what these things mean if you have really long anecdotes, especially with descriptions and dialogue. So if you write an anecdote, I want you to look at it carefully and see if you can cut it down by 50%, because almost invariably, the shorter version is going to be more effective. You really don't need to use as much space as you think. A few key details can be enough to capture a scene or to make something interesting, enable somebody to visualize what was going on, but you do not need to tell the whole story. We do not need to read every detail about it. Dialogue, again, I've said this before, but I can't tell you how often students include useless dialogue. Only include dialogue if what was said in some extremely memorable way. It was phrased wonderfully, it's stuck in your mind ever since. If it's just saying regular things, paraphrase if you even need to mention it at all. But don't waste space otherwise. And perhaps one of the most important things to keep in mind, and this comes up particularly if you're talking about interests, is to keep the focus on you. No matter what you're writing about, it could be a topic that interests you, it could be something that happened, whatever it may be. you're using it as an opportunity to show or explain something about yourself. So it's okay to show that you're knowledgeable about whatever the topic is. Excuse me. But make sure that the focus is always on you. You're not writing a whole paragraph about whatever the topic is. You're showing a few details have about something, but only as a means to then talk about how this fits in with you, with your goals, with your values, and things like that. Because at the end of the day, they're not looking for, it's not an academic essay, as I said, it's about you. And you need to make sure that at the end of reading it, the admissions officer comes away feeling like they actually know who you are, that they can imagine what kind of person you will be and what kind of student you'll be on campus. And they have to want you to be there. Okay, a few final notes on the writing. And some of these you probably already know. So please proofread. I don't want you to obsess over the writing, because the writing does not have to be perfect, especially if you're on the STEM side and you're not applying to be a lit major or something like that. But there should not be any spelling mistakes. There should not be any typographical errors. And there should not be any basic grammar errors either. If you have any of those, you're going to end up in the no pile right away. You need to write a strong opening. As I said, skip the introduction. You want to grab the reader's attention right away. If you haven't piqued their interest, they may stop reading. There's nothing that says that an admissions officer needs to read your entire file or your entire essay. They don't. And if they read the first paragraph or the first few sentences and it doesn't capture their interest, that may be as much as they read. Don't let that happen. One thing that students rarely do, and would help their writing, not just for application essays, but any essay you have to write for school, is to read your draft essay out loud. Actually go somewhere where you're not worried about people listening and read it out loud. When you do that, you can often find awkward phrasing, things that don't make sense. You will pick up many stylistic errors and many things that interrupt the flow of your writing that you wouldn't catch if you were simply reading it on the page or on your screen. Finally, let your personality and voice come through. If you have your sense of humor, your passion, your empathy, whatever it is, let it come through. Because at the end of the day, that's what your personal statement needs to do if you want the admissions officers to fight for you and to get you a place in the class at the college of your choice. Now, we have lots of time, I think, for questions. I also have some examples I'd like to show you. So give me a moment to see if I can share another document. Hang on just a second. Sophia, do I have to go back and stop sharing this to share a new document?
Is your documents open?
It's somewhere else, but I think I have to stop sharing this one to share another one. So hang on just a second, okay?
Yeah, if your documents open, you yes, yeah, you can just select another one. Correct.
Okay, hang on just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
And your voice is sometimes faded out. So somehow if you can close to your, I don't know, where's microphone? Yeah, some audience type in the chat box saying your voice is cutting out sometimes.
Okay, I will try and stay closer to the microphone.
Yes, please.
Okay, is that better?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
We're not going to go over all of these, but we're going to go for a few. Okay, so here's one example. These are all examples of first drafts of essays that students sent to me that I did not have any input on the topic or the writing at this point. So this person says, they start with a quote, not something I recommend, uses up too much space, especially if it's a quote from somebody else. It's always good to remember where you come from and celebrate it. To remember where you come from is part of where you're going. Anthony Burgess. Less than a year away from adulthood, I keep this quote in mind as I go through my college process and try to find my home for the next 4 years. As I reflect on the most significant events that have led me to where I am today, I need not look any further than my footlocker, which houses my history as well as my opportunities for the future. Okay, so this person started with a quote. They don't need that. And definitely an introduction here. We don't need to hear that you're thinking about the next 4 years at this point. This is not helpful. This is an example of somebody who's using like a treasured object. And it could be the rest of the essay could be very effective, but the bit that we need to get to, I would start with the footlocker. We don't need any of the rest of that. It was not helpful. I'll do the next one. Oh, that one's not so good. Okay, let's read this one. My mind is a kaleidoscope. It is impossible for me to decide upon a single aspect of myself to write about that makes me stand out from the crowd because there are so many aspects that I could use that make me who I am. Again, this person is starting with an introduction that's stating what they're going through and trying to write the personal statement. Don't bother. Okay, I'm from a small prison town that does not offer many opportunities, which is what prompted me to switch schools to pursue a STEM diploma. I'm a student that craves knowledge. I want to learn everything and know everything. I've always pushed myself to conquer the person I was yesterday because I know that if I can just make it through one more day, one more month, one more year, I will be victorious in all of my pursuits. Okay, so the first few sentences here, as I said, were not helping. It was too much introduction. There was one interesting detail in this that I immediately grabbed onto. This student grew up in a prison town. There is an interesting thing in the student's environment. And when we talked about it more, it had a big impact, the types of jobs that the student's parents had, the overall environment, the economic environment in the town. This definitely had an impact on who the student was and the things that they were interested in. That was interesting. So instead of, we didn't need all the rest of the stuff, but that part was what they should have gotten to right away. Okay, here's one. Most people consider watching television as something negative or something that you only do when you're feeling lazy. I guess it seems that way. You sit motionless on a comfortable piece of furniture and stare at a screen that flashes different colors while emitting noise, all usually while eating an unhealthy snack. I agree that this is sometimes necessary to give your brain a rest from school or work. Television is not always meant to be a static machine. It is interactive and dynamic. It is a tool. And with any tool, if you use it the right way, you can discover something incredible. Let's journey back in time to when I was 6 or 7 years old. You would often find me seeking out my favorite cartoons on the TV in my family room. However, I was reaching the age when I began to tire of these simple childish programs and long for something more complex and fascinating. I drifted farther up into channels with higher numbers and found Discovery, Health, and Science Channel, luckily not too far away. It may seem surprising, but even at this young age, I found I loved Discovery Health right away. My favorite show was Mystery Diagnosis. I longed to someday solve mysterious cases like those brilliant doctors on the show did. At this point, when asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would reply, doctor. Okay, so this one thing that this student did well was I captured their voice and a bit of their personality. You can tell that it's written in a little bit of a more casual style. And I thought that that was effective. However, way too much talk about television. This is not an essay about television, and the entire first paragraph is about that. It says nothing about the student. The interesting part, and where they should have started, was with the fact that Mystery Diagnosis was their favorite show when they were like 8 years old. That's interesting. So again, less background. We don't need the long introduction. Go straight to the interesting part. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, here's an example of my point about having a strong opening. Last year, I got a tumor for Christmas. Right away, this student has grabbed your attention, piqued your interest. I wanted to read more. And doing it with a bit of humor. Obviously, this was a traumatic time for them, but at the same time, the way the student wrote that showed a bit of humor and personality. So that was very effective. The rest of it was fine. If you read this, during the last few days of school before long anticipated Christmas break, the days when the sweet taste of freedom is on the tip of your tongue, I was forced to stay home with intense stomach pains. You can read the rest of this. But the student has effectively shown a bit of personality, and although this is obviously a difficult experience that they're talking about, they're doing it with a sense of humor and not being too serious and not trying to go for the pity. And that was effective. Okay, here's another one. A role model is someone who you look up to. They're optimistic, strong, compassionate, and hopeful. My role model since I was 11 has been my godmother. Since she was 17, cancer plagued her life until her death on April 14, 2020. She was always in and out of surgeries and frequently stayed in hospitals. Although she was constantly doing something cancer-related, she maintained a smile on her face and was energetic. If you just met her, you would never guess that she had cancer. Every day was just a regular day. Her cancer was an unfortunate realization at the end of the day. Regardless of her not being here, she has made me the person I am and aspire to be. This was not an effective opening, and we did a lot of work to change this. The statement like a role model is someone who you look up to. We don't want a definition. This is self-evident. This is not grabbing anybody's attention. It's not saying something surprising or intriguing. Not an effective way to start. In addition, this entire opening paragraph is about the grandmother. And other than this person saying that their grandmother was a role model, I don't know anything about them after an entire paragraph. You can't waste that much space and without telling the reader something about yourself. Because again, 650 words is over like that. You need to make sure you're using every sentence to tell the reader something about you. Okay, here's the last one I have to show you. Our house would be a botanist's dream. In every corner and on every windowsill, the different subject of the plant kingdom, from aloe vera and jade plants to Chinese evergreens. However, out of our wide assortment of fauna, one plant in particular bears a special personal significance. On any average day, no observer would think especially of this plant, which is actually a species of cactus, nor would they have any reason to. For 364 days a year, it presents an uninteresting display, nothing more than a cluttered collection of barbed, shriveled leaves and sagging trunks. But for just a single night every year, from dusk to dawn, it births a unique gift. Zai, Zai, cries my mother from the living room. Come see. I rush out of my room and descend the stairs, knowing that this is the night. Emerged from the foliage is a spectacular white flower. Luscious waxy petals shape a fist-sized bowl inhabited by flecks of bright yellow. Now, this student, at least at the beginning, they ended up writing a terrific essay, not about this, but the student had the misconception that I spoke about at the beginning, that they needed to have a theme and they needed to have dialogue, none of which is really effective here. Again, through this whole introduction, I know nothing about the student. If the student had planned to go into botany as a career and they were going to major in that, then maybe there might be something to work with here. But I think the student was thinking, well, this is a great sort of, if there was some symbolism to this, and that somehow, you know, I'm not sure exactly how they thought it would work, but they were trying to find something that was going to be a great symbol or metaphor for something. And this wasn't capturing it. It didn't fit with anything else the student really had to say, or the student's strengths or values. And while the writing was fine, and maybe it would work as an essay for something else, it just wasn't going to be effective as an application essay. So we ended up leaving this, and the student had worked on this for quite a long time, but we ended up going in a totally different direction because this was not actually doing justice to who he was as an applicant, which was a very strong applicant. But reading this, it wasn't really telling you anything about him. So those are the examples I have, and hopefully you can see a little bit on the importance, particularly of having a strong opening, and maybe in some cases showing you a bit of personality, not wasting space on things that aren't relevant and aren't saying something about you. Are there any questions? Is that something you can help us, Sophia? I'm happy to take questions from people.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very meaningful. I want to kind of emphasize a couple things, if I may take some time before you can stop your sharing your screen.
Yes.
I think in the audience, there must be some student. So I know I have to speak English, but sometimes for the benefit of repeating some information are important. I also wanted to use Chinese to summarize a little bit, if I may. I just wanted to have a dialogue with you before I share the screen about maybe hold on one second. Let me share the screen, that way I can continue on. Okay, before we summarize and get into the question session, I just want to let everyone know, if you think Arienne's presentation information is great benefit to you, and if you want to have a dialogue with her to directly seeking her guidance and professional opinion, you can scan the barcode on the right hand side. If you fill the form, me and Allison can arrange 30 minutes free inquiry meeting for you. You can ask some personal questions for your student. And also on the, if you don't have that needs, then you can scan the barcode on the left-hand side, which get into IvyCompass WeChat group. And that way you can continue receive information about what we're offering for those other topic or information every single month. Okay, so I'm going to leave this page on so you can use some time to do that. I want to repeat a couple of things. Number one, last year, similar, I think maybe we did a presentation in September. I believe it's September. Yeah, last year. And we will talk about maybe this year we need to do something earlier because September is just too rush for students to start in school and then doing the personal statement, and then their ED1 deadline is approached on November 1st. And I remember I have a particular student, her name I will not release, but I remember her mom was also in our group sharing her stories. And she was a very quiet student. And I remember, although she had a consultant from our IvyCompass group, which is very, very good consultant, and also had a very good social consultant, both of them are working very hard for this student. But I remember her mom was calling me, and also the social consultant was calling me saying, Sophia, we need help. She will not give us anything. Because, you know, in order for the consultant and you do a wonder on the student on personal essay, you have to give something first, meaning you have to give a first draft. Without that first draft, I'm talking about almost like when you're cooking, you know, if you want to cooking a gongbao chicken, you have no chicken, you have no peanuts, and you have no pepper. And how you as a coach, you're not able to providing any advice to the student because they have to give you something because you're not mind reader, nor you are swarm in their stomach. You don't know what they're thinking, you know, doesn't matter how much you spend time with them, you're still not able to know their lifetime story and what that unique interest or you're talking about happy. So this student just absolutely cannot write anything. Just the first draft was so difficult. And I remember we were working with her for 2 months. Until September, we still do not have. By the way, you know, we usually starting that essay from July, you know, July, August, during the summer, usually, like you said, is the time for us to working with the student on their personal statement. And, you know, September is kind of late. And I remember you made a bad presentation on September and just dawned to me, you know, because she already signed a student, is a signing student, dawned to me, I invite the mom. I said, tell your daughter to come join presentation with Arienne. Just to listen to you, see if anything can help her because we're really out of a way of helping her. I don't know what to do because she just cannot produce the first draft. And after, you know, brainstorming everything, the whole procedure, we did it. We still cannot have anything. And she told me later on, after your presentation, something tricking her. She ran upstairs right after your presentation, 40 minutes, she wrote her draft. Voila, that first draft gave our social consultant at least, you know, some chicken, some peanuts, some pepper. At least we're able to put the gongbao chicken together. You know, we're not talking about the gongbao chicken looks beautiful. We're not talking about the gongbao chicken is tasty, but at least it's gongbao chicken. You know, we have a something. then I think your job, Arienne as coach, your job, or any other consultant, their job is making that 宫保 chicken looks beautiful. You know, 我们中文叫色香味俱全 meaning taste good, looking beautiful, and also appetizing for people, drool, you know, 流口水, you know, eating that dish. Am I right?
Yes, but could I add one thing?
Okay.
If I prefer to get students a little sooner so that we can help decide what dish they're going to make, because the last thing you want is another sweet and sour chicken. So
very good.
So hopefully, if I can work with them a little earlier, we can figure out what recipe would actually be the most, the best recipe for them. And, that would be even better. But if they give me the Kung Pao chicken one, then we'll work with that. Depending on how long they have until the deadline and where their target schools are. Sometimes, I've told students who've sent me full essays, if this is where you want to go and I've seen the rest of your transcript, this essay is not going to help you. It's not going to help get you there. Yeah. But it's better to avoid that by hopefully spending a bit of time picking the right topic first.
Very good, very good. So number one, I wanted to reiterate how important is spending time to, have a brainstorming ideas. So that's why this year we give you that presentation about Arienne's as professional essay coach. She's only do that. That's her only job. She does not do college application, but she has the ability helping many students doing the college application. But right now, she only focuses on coaching the essay. So you can see if you have enough time. Right now, it's July. That's why we make presentation in July. So we give you enough time if you think, and which Arienne, you added very clearly and very good points is, before you decide to make a gopao chicken, if you don't know you want to make that or sweet sour chicken, it's good to have a conversation with someone. If you stuck with it, be honest with you. I'm not scaring you. Don't go to your parents because your parents is not a professional person in this field. They may be a high executive in their field as a scientist, as an IT professional, or as a consultant or CEO. But unfortunately, this business, what they're reading, what they want to read, and how you put that together, I don't care if they are Google CEO, they may not be coaching your student in the right way to write a good essay, because we have many actually parents come to us. They always want to give some idea, particularly one idea many parents want to give is, my daughter is play tennis or my son is play piano, and they spend time to helping another poor kids to play piano. They're helping another poor kids to, writing a code or doing some kind of website. And they insist thinking those kind of type of object or subject is good to write. And I remember coaching you. I remember asking you. I remember seeking help from the other consultant. Not a good idea. So sometimes as parents, let us be humble to asking somebody understanding in this business, understanding the essay is trying to what you just present. Not be so thinking we're so confident doing our job, right? And then we're here telling the consultant or telling our, student or our kids to write something, may not do it. Okay, may not do it. So you just heard it. Thinking about you are helping somebody or you raise a lot of money to supporting young people doesn't work, right? Doesn't work. But a lot of parents coming to us, they want us to take on that story, although we tell them it's not working. So we want you to find the right person. Obviously, you have to find the right person and then listen to that person's advice. That's one thing I want to also have a dialogue and then, re-emphasize on that. I know there's some questions. If you have any more questions, continue to write it on the chat box, but I'm going to give you some, okay? Mm-hmm. The first one from Heidi Pan. I have heard cautions against writing about experience with a mental health like anxiety. If I have been a mental health activist, I wanted to write about it. Would this cause a connection or concern for AOs?
I've actually had quite a lot of students write about mental health challenges. It's not necessarily the first choice topic I would pick, but it can be effective. But I think if you're going to write about mental health challenges, the most important thing is to make sure that you're giving this a positive spin. The point is, you don't want the colleges to be concerned about you and to think, oh dear, they're going to come to campus and they're going to be overwhelmed by the stress and we're going to have to worry about something happening to them. But if you can show that you've conquered your problem, you've conquered your issue.
Oh, I'm sorry, Arienne. I maybe I did not mention that question right. This, I think it's student. This student is being mental health activist.
Right.
Can she write about it?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, mental health is a huge issue on most college campuses these days. So if somebody is a mental health advocate, that's great. I suspect that there may be some reason they decided to do it. It may not be their own personal challenge. It might be somebody close to them. That's fine. I think that, in fact, colleges are going to want people on campus who have some awareness and experience and understanding of these issues. They don't want students keeping it secret and hiding all of their stresses and not having a support network among their friends. So, and honestly, if this is what the student is super passionate about, and this is what makes them tick and get out of bed in the morning, then that's what they should write about. I don't think there's any topic that's actually off limits. I think the important thing is to be who you really are.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I also wanted to remind our audience, thank you very much. If you wanted to have a dialogue with Arienne directly, instead of typing the question in the chat box, you're welcome to do so. Just raise hand. Then I can, open mic for you. You can directly ask question. If you think you can explain your question better, then I illustrate, then go right ahead. Okay. So let me continue reading the question from the chat box, but you're welcome to do so. Raise your hand. Okay, that next question comes from Cassie Lu. If a student is a 504 plan due to medical disability, we'll write an essay about it. This affect college application? Would that be effect?
I think students that have IEPs and other accommodations and plans like that, most colleges have an opportunity to write about special challenges and provide additional documentation. And I usually recommend that the students leave the discussion of that to this extra essay. In fact, I had a student last year who had a hugely traumatic incident with one of his parents a couple of years ago, which had a big impact on his life. And I felt like it was important for colleges to know about, but I didn't want that to be the most important thing. Like, I didn't want him to be known only for that. Here's the kid whose mother had a stroke. Because that's not the most important thing about him and where he's going. It was important for them to understand the challenges he's faced, but I didn't want him to write his personal statement about that. And by the same token, if you don't want your student to be, oh, here's the student with a 504 plan because of what, and whatever it is, that's not the whole of their identity. And that's not the most interesting part of their identity, probably. It's not capturing, probably doesn't capture who they are as a person and what they're interested in. So I feel like if there's stuff that's important for the college to know that relates to that, you want to put that in a separate document or a separate additional essay. But the personal statement, I would keep to other things.
Excellent. Thank you, Arienne. Okay, I have 3 audience raise a hand. I'm giving to Jenny. Jenny Shi, you're the first one. You can ask question directly, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So my son, grade 11, he has a non-profit and he done lots of work around that globally, have some impact on lots of case. He want to write this, but it seems like it's a bragging, right? It's belong to that category. Is it a good idea to write he's a non-profit?
It kind of depends on the situation. I have to tell you, there are an awful lot of students who have started nonprofits of one sort or another. So I think it depends on how closely the particular mission of the nonprofit relates to his actual interest. Is this something he was just doing for like community service and resume building and, you know, stuff like that, volunteer work? Or is this something that's actually the kernel of his career passion? And, you know, and how has he taken this sort of thing farther than a lot of other students? Because as I said, like having a nonprofit is now not so unusual. It would have to be sort of the scale and the particular things he's doing. If they're very unique and different, or if he's doing so much more than other students, then fine. And as I said, I think it has to connect to the bigger picture. So think about is the packaging going to match the product? Is he somebody who wants to go into the public sector and keep working on this particular, this field? Or is he somebody who's going into business or some STEM field, and this is just something he does on the side? If it's not really connected to some more fundamental aspects and who he is as a person and the whole package in his application, then I would steer clear of it, because it can sound a bit too braggy. But if it's really an important thing and this is where his life is headed, then yes. But as I said, it's kind of fact specific. So I would have to know more about him to really give you the answer on that.
Right, it's almost like a repeat. It's almost like you have a main story, academic main story. Everything has to be tied into that main story to make sense about your leadership, about community service, about your personal statement. Like you said, everything has to be tied in. That's why it's so important, cohesive. That message is important, right?
Yes.
Also here, I want to I have two more family raise hand, but before that, I wanted to also emphasize on one thing. I often hear there's parents come and call me saying, oh, you know, I pay somebody $3,000, somebody English speaking. Oh, they're, you know, reading my essay. I'm asking them to helping my kids to adding essay. Let me tell you, your money is most likely, I won't so saying definitely, but most likely maybe not working, okay? Just a English spoken person, you just saw Arienne share a couple samples. By reading that, you know, most of us were not able to tell. Seriously, most. I remember my kid's father are English spoken, and he's a writer. He writes stories. And I remember he coaching my son for the, you know, essay and stuff. But I also hired a college counselor. I remember he is like torn, you know, read, you know, change a lot. So let me just tell you, if you spend $3,000 trying to save the money, this is not the right thing to do. I'm not trying to say you have to hire somebody or you have to pay money to someone, but really looking for somebody professional, only doing, because college essay is very different than many writings. It's not a, you know, jerking on somebody neighbored, you know, because he speaks English, he's white. And then, you know, he can help you kids to add your essay. It's not, because that essay also have to be related to other academic interests, related to your other activities. Everything had to be, you know, weaving in together. So that's something treated as a professional thing, you know, because they are the reader, the person evaluating your whole package. When they read your personal statement as a whole package, they have a different professional eyes to looking for things, looking for, just like what Arienne said, looking for who you are. They try to see, are you fit in my school? Are you fitting in our core value? Are you fitting our mission? Are you fitting where we're trying to train for the next future person to move along the society and making change and positive impact for our society? So they're looking for that. They're looking for those tracks. If you're not able to do in the right way, just pay $3,000 for a neighbor because, you know, he speak English to help your kids to edit your essay. Let me tell you, it's not working. Your money most likely is wasted, and you don't even know about it. You don't even know why you're being rejected, because your essay maybe is one hurdle they feel it's not interesting, or you are not what they're looking for, just like you know, to try to apply jobs. So I wanted to really spend some time to emphasize, don't pick somebody on the street because they speak English. They have the capability helping you, coaching you on your kids applying colleges. And also don't think without anybody looking over your kids' essay, their essay is, because your kids is ABC, they speak English. Let me tell you, there's no one in my 10 years of education speak English ABC. They went to Stanford. Their essay is still very much coached line by line by our consultant. Just let me tell you how much that's involved with a professional, trained professional to do this. I just wanted to make it clear, okay? So don't take it lightly. Whatever you see in yourself is not what other people see in you. So you need a second eyes and third eyes with that professional eyes to look for you how you present yourself in the right way. Okay, so I just want to spend time to emphasize that. I want to urge, don't make a mistake. Like you said, you spend so much time. You don't want it to last. Core competent and then component and waste that space. Okay, Allison Liu, you are next. You want to open your mic and you can ask a question to Arienne, please. Thank you. Okay, you don't want to ask a question. Okay, then sorry. Maybe I speak too long. Sorry about that. I just wanted to emphasize that very key information. Okay, next one is Huanglin Li. Li Huanglin, please, you can open your mic, ask questions, please. Are you there? Okay, next one is Joey. You're open mic now. Okay, go ahead, say.
I'm sorry, I just click on the wrong button.
Okay, you're okay now. Go ahead. Oh, okay. No, okay, there it's a mistake. Okay, Zoe. Zoe, you want to ask a question? Hello, Zoe. You can open up your mic. All right, okay, maybe they just pushed the wrong button. All right.
Do you want to read some more?
Hello? Okay, then next question. Okay, is this a good topic? Student had a person severe injury event affecting sports improvement and performance, but his persistence and consistency on training hard and keep competition for years, shaping his personal growth from overcoming his huge difficulty and overcoming lots of challenge.
It's hard to write about sports in general, and sports injuries and persistence. It's not that it's happened to everyone, but it's still not uncommon. And it's really hard to say something interesting and unique about it. And I feel like, honestly, although persistence is a great quality to have, but I have to think that this student, is that the most interesting thing about this student? Is that like, I think probably not. I'm sure there's something that's more fundamental to who they are and what they value and where they're going. Or what are they going to apply the persistence to? It's not, unless they're planning on being a professional athlete, how else are they channeling this? I mean, maybe the injury could be like a sentence or two as part of some other focused essay. But I feel like writing the whole thing around that is, I don't know, it's been done too many times and it's hard to find something different to say.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, next one is Nancy. Nancy Shi asking, how can we find an interesting angle about UC essay on community?
The University of California prompts?
Yeah, on community.
Oh, so that's the one, like, which community, tell us about a community you're a part of, I guess. It's hard to come up with a different community because most people only have so many that they're a part of. But I think you just have to come up with whichever one is the most unusual for them or whatever, or the most meaningful to the student. I'm sure, and in fact, you know what, parents, man, your student may in fact feel like they have a lot of other communities that you know nothing about. They could be part of some online gaming community that you don't know what they're doing. There could be all sorts of other communities that are not, resume type things, but that your student actually feels connected to, or people who are fans of some particular, sports team or rap music artist or whatever it is. And to be honest, that would be much more interesting than most of the typical essays that somebody would write in response. So, I would ask the student to actually think about, what kinds of people they connect to and why, and what other communities that are not the typical ones that they feel like they're a part of.
Okay. The next question is from WW. What topics would you recommend avoiding besides the one mentioned in your seminar? For example, it is better to avoid discussing mental health. Any other things? Have you seen anything you feel is very interesting to prompt? But maybe you can talk about how you're brainstorming, with the student to help them finding any points.
I mean, I think in terms of what you avoid, ask yourself if any other student could be writing a similar essay. That's the bottom line. If they could, then avoid the topic. I don't think there's any, and other than something that's offensive or like, criminal activity, don't write about something like that. Obviously steer clear of anything that's offensive or racist or sexist or whatever. You don't want to, nothing like that. But otherwise, I don't think there's any topic that's off limits. When I'm brainstorming with students, I have a 3-page questionnaire that I send them that has questions about all sorts of things. And this is something we do in writing because I need to see how the student expresses themselves in print. And they will send me back their answers. And then I send them, based on those answers, I send them a whole bunch of additional questions, like tell me more about this, and well, what about that? And then they send me more answers. And we go back and forth, and I keep asking them more questions, dive a little deeper into the things that I think might be interesting, that have potential to be a good topic. And we keep probing until we find something that really feels like it's capturing the important thing about them, but it's interesting and it's meaningful. And eventually, it usually takes going back and forth several times over however long it takes them. It's easier with some students than others. And I actually also find often that the better students and better writers often have a harder time, but eventually you get it out of them. But you just have to go back and forth to do that. But no topic is off limits other than, criminal activity or something that's clearly offensive, that would get you kicked out of school. Avoid anything like that. But otherwise, if it's unique and interesting, then it has potential.
Wonderful. That's great. I saw there's a couple people asking, is there any reporting? Yes, will be. We're usually editing for about a week. Then we put in our IvyCompass WeChat group. So if you're missing some of the information, you would like to watching it, yeah, you can check in about a week later. We will be having reporting. And also, some people asking how we reach out to have services and pricing. If you can just add a WeChat, either scan the barcode on the right hand side. Me and Allison will follow up with you. We will call you, or maybe you can add me and add Allison's WeChat. At our WeChat, me and Allison will be follow up with you to connecting you to arrange a meeting for you to talk to Arienne directly. Yes, Arienne offering services for personal statement and also supplemental essay, both. Okay, she only working on that. Okay, she only working on that, and also she know the entire application process. So she's very familiar. So you need somebody understanding that entire application process in order to help you really target on the good personal statement and supplemental as well. Both are important. Okay, the next question is coming from Jason. Then I will open up mic. 2 more people raise hand. Jason, she asking, should we try to use up all the 650 words limit?
No, but if you have a hard time getting to 650 words, then chances are it wasn't the right topic. usually what I tell my students in the year when they first start writing, after we've decided on a topic that I think is good, that I want them to aim for like 800 words, because it's so much easier to cut down extra stuff. Inevitably, students write like their writing is too wordy, and we can pare it down and make it much stronger. I would not submit something that's less than 600 if you can avoid it, because then it really sounds short. If you really have that little to say about yourself, it's concerning. As I said, like if you find it hard to get to 650 words, then you probably haven't found the right topic.
Okay, great. I see, yeah, Fen-Shi, you already opened your mic, so please go ask question directly. Thank you.
Thank you. As a parents, we just want to know if we have like how could we cooperate with students and cooperate with like the counselor, like to help to have this prepare for the essay. Which stage should we like contribute? Like is the ideal brainstorm anything?
Okay, so this may not be what you want to hear, but this is the truth here. The parent's role in this piece, the personal statement, I think would be to find somebody outside of your family to give your student good advice. Hopefully somebody that you trust. You remember that as the parent, you've already done so much. You've been there helping them and guiding them with all of their courses, all of their extracurricular activities, everything else. This is just one piece, but this particular piece is one piece that I think it's much easier and more effective for somebody who's not the parent to deal with it. In fact, I have to tell you this too, that in the brainstorming process and talking with students, I do it directly with the students, and I will update parents as needed, but it's super important to have it just be a conversation between me and the student, because the students will tell me things and talk about things that they don't necessarily say to their parents. And they know what their parents want to hear. Their parents want to hear what a great student they are and how, their accomplishments. They know what their parents want to hear about them. But that's not the stuff that's going to make for an effective application essay. And I know it's really difficult for the parents to be involved in this piece. And I know it's hard to let go a little bit, but what you have to do is have confidence that you have found them good advice and let somebody else help them with this part. If they want to share it with you or share their ideas, that's fine, but leave it up to them. And then if they're willing to let you read a later draft, that's fine too. But I would not push it, and I would just have some faith that this is one of those situations where somebody else will probably be able to get a better result out of your child than you will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I echo that. 我回想一下哈，我真的I wanted to echo that because our other consultants said the same thing. I know many people know John as our former admission officer from Cornell. He's one of very much liked by our family student, coaching the student very effectively. He also very clearly instructing our social consultant and us as a team during the personal statement piece. That's that process. He does not want parents to get involved. He does not want the parents to get involved. The reason is sometimes they need dive deep. They need helping the student reflect in. You have to understand that reflect in. And the parents in there, a lot of kids were not able to. Sometimes even they don't want the parents to hear what they want to say, because otherwise will be only superficial. So really as a parents in this piece, find somebody you trust, find somebody professional and give that piece to the child. Let the child have a conversation with the consultant, third person directly. It's more effective, because if a moving essay or moving person who reads it, if the essay is not moving, only on the superficial to say something not deep enough, then the reader will not able to affect it. Then it's not good at personal statement. So that serves the purpose only to really look into who you are, kind of thing, and for other people to know who you are. So yes, thank you. I wanted to, because not just when you say that, all the message we hear is also saying that that piece, it's better parents not get involved, kind of thing. Okay. All right. Next is yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I know it may not sound right, but we want to be honest. Our policy is be honest. We don't want to 忽悠你啊，用中文是忽悠你，说好听的，让你听得很舒服。我们大家都会说这些话，但是 not serve the purpose， 不会帮助你。这个 piece 要给小孩子一点空间，让他们有这个空间，很好的去 reflecting who they are， 还是一个成长的 piece。如果这个 piece 做得好的话，有很多小孩子会很成熟，他会觉得 relieved， 有一个空间让他能够 truthfully tell other people who they are， 真的是一个很好的一个成长的过程。我们发现这几年，跟孩子一起经历过来哈，真的是一个蛮 special 的 moment。OK， 谢谢您啊，谢谢您，非常好的问题。我相信很多家长都很感兴趣，都是想帮助嘛。这个心意我们是理解的。谢谢您。好，下一个 HS， 你的 mic open， you may ask question please. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for giving me the chance. First of all, very informational, very interesting discussion. I really appreciate all the nuggets shared here. So here's my question. You know, my daughter is a rising junior, and sometimes she's thinking about what she would like to write in the future for the application. And one question she raised to me, and I think it's applied to lots of parents and families here is, you know, majority of the kids, we are living in a very nice environment, and they don't have adversity too much. Not too many people experience like an illness or poor or like a very hardship due financial hardship, right? So they are kind of the blessed kids, right? So for those quote unquote normal kids, right? What is the best way to help them to find the uniqueness that can, you know, really reflect themselves? I know it's easy to say every kid has their uniqueness. It's very easy to say. However, you know, it's a common question. I also have deal with lots of students as like a parent support group. So they're saying, I don't have those hard things. What do I need to do? What do I need to talk about to really, you know, make myself outstanding? So I think that's a question I want to check. Thank you very much.
Very good question. Yeah, very good question.
While those essays that talk about hardship and difficulty can be effective, your student absolutely does not need to write something like that. And then, you know, people understand that a lot of these kids come from great backgrounds and they haven't had to deal with things like that. That's fine. And they shouldn't pretend or try to make it sound like they have. When I think back over the essays that I've helped students write, not very many of them actually fall into that category where they had something traumatic or horrible happen to them. So it's totally not necessary. That maybe the things that, you know, would be easiest to write about, but it doesn't have to be. The brainstorming process is something that takes time and a lot of reflection. And usually when students are in school, they really don't have time to think about it. And students don't necessarily like thinking about these things. They don't like talking about themselves and thinking about themselves too much, except in, you know, their Instagram ways. I'm not sure that parents can help a lot, in part for the same reasons that we were just discussing with the last question. Students don't necessarily share their innermost thoughts and feelings and ideas with their parents all the time because they know what you're focused on and they know what you want to hear. So I'm not sure that you can necessarily help a lot with that, but the brainstorming, I mean, I did include in my slides some of the types of brainstorming questions that I ask and the things that I want them to think about. And they're the sorts of things that are not related to their activities and their classes and their achievements. They're more sort of fundamental things, like they would address why they chose the things that they do and why they're interested in the things that they're interested in. Even the things that have no resume value at all. Like some of those are really revealing. What they actually do for fun when the parents aren't telling them that they need to be studying or whatever. I'm not sure that but don't worry about the fact that, your student has had a good and happy childhood. That's great. It's not a problem. There are things about them that, that somebody can find, that they can tease out when it's time to write the essay. And I just want to make another point too. You said you have a rising junior. I don't like students to actually start thinking about the essay topics until the end of their junior year. There is no advantage to doing it earlier. Students go through a lot of changes and a lot of growth, and they have a lot of other things that are super important, whether it's studying for their SATs or working on, their activities or developing their other interests, the things that will make them an interesting applicant. So I don't think that anybody needs to worry about the personal statement piece until they're done with their schoolwork in junior year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great question. Also, I wanted to mention, Arienne also have a package only for brainstorming. Okay, this year we had a discussion with her. So if you don't want her to help you edit the personal statement or supplemental, she can also providing the package and consulting and also coaching for your student just for brainstorming. Okay, so for that piece. Just if you are interested, let me and Allison know. Okay, Zoe, I know you open mic twice, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna ask, is it okay to write about my relationship between art and math? Because I go to a STEM school, but I'm applying for an art major, which is kind of confusing.
Okay, so things like that I personally like. I think if these are both important parts of who you are and your interests, I'm not sure what your ultimate career goals are, but there may in fact be some common reasons why both of these things interest you and why you like these things. So yes, you can absolutely write about how two things that don't obviously seem related actually fit in with your personality and who you are. Because if you have these two main interests, it makes you interesting, and I want to know, well, why? What is it that attracts her to these things? And I bet you there are ways that you can capture both of them. So I don't have a problem with that, but you have to make sure that you find some way to integrate them. You can't just write, I have two passions, one is art, one is math. There has to be some thought into actually how this fits together into you in some, cohesive way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I just have a question asking, what is a good time to start prepare personal statement? I think you just answered 9th grade.
No.
Is 9th grade summer?
No, and in fact, I would be shocked if this personal statement that a student wrote after 9th grade, if they actually wanted to use that one after 11th grade, I highly doubt it. I mean, they're going to be a different person by then. And they may have, things have a chance to evolve and develop. So wait and give them time. There are a ton of other things they could be doing with their time, but they don't need to be doing this yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The next question coming from XK Zhao. How about topic of LGBTQ topic?
That can be fine. Again, this sort of goes to the diversity point. We didn't really talk about it in this presentation. I talked about it more last year. Colleges want a diverse student body. They don't want everyone who's the same. They want a lot of different voices and different opinions and different viewpoints and different experiences. I don't know that I would throw it in there just to say, oh, I'm different. But if this is a fundamental aspect of that student's identity, if that it has an impact on their career goals or the things that they choose to get involved with, sure. I don't think you need to hesitate to do it. Again, if you just want the college to know that they are part of that community, you can probably get that in there by putting some club or activity on the list and they'll know. But if it's an important piece of who the student is, then they don't need to avoid writing about it.
Okay, thank you, Arienne. Thank you. Question from Lily Ma. Is college application essay similar to summer camp application essay?
I mean, I think application essays in general all have some similarities. I think the college application essay is particularly important. It has to accomplish much more than like, you know, some of the summer program ones. And depending on the summer program that we're talking about, some of them are very specific, whether it's one of the, you know, the science ones, STEM ones that are very focused, they tend to be more topic focused. And here we're talking, it's more of a holistic thing. The colleges don't want to know why you're particularly interested in STEM, or they may ask that in one of the supplementary questions, not the personal statement, but they want to get a holistic view of who the student is as a person.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arienne. That's a good answer. Okay, I know they asked this question similar, but I'm going to repeat that. Yafen, she asking, does growing up in a rural area versus in the city, is that matter?
It definitely can be. If you've grown up somewhere that's not the norm. I mean, here I live in New Jersey, and there's, you know, most of New Jersey is fairly densely populated, and most of these students tend to come from pretty high income communities. If a student is from, you know, some small town in Maine, or, you know, Kansas, or Alaska, or wherever, or Texas, or West Virginia, for sure that would be interesting. If they feel like it's an interesting thing to write about. But it depends on like what you mean by rural. If it's just like not in the city, the bottom line is like you have to think about how different is it, and how much of an impact has it had on the student. I mean, I don't think you want to write about, you know, I live in a rural area if it really hasn't shaped the person that you are. But if you live in the middle of, you know, millions of acres of farmland, and you have like a perspective on agricultural issues and, you know, international trade and grain and who knows what, then maybe it is an important thing in shaping the student's perspective. So I think you have to look at the specific facts and see, but it could be. That's something that I would explore like in the brainstorming process, you know, and like the student who in the essay that I showed you a bit of, who mentioned just in passing that they grew up in a prison town. Well, for sure, we explored that, and it turned out that was like an important piece to them.
Thank you. Okay, that question, this next is coming from WW. Is it okay to mention ethnicity in this essay? With affirmative action, do you think this will have a measurable impact on their decision?
I mean, the affirmative action situation, you know, it's all kind of up in the air. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to have as much impact. I think colleges are still going to find a way to do what they want to do. And they still want a diverse student body, and they're going to find ways to get that. You know, they can't obviously have quotas, and they might have to find different ways, but I think they will. So mentioning, I mean, again, this depends. Usually, admissions officers can tell from everything else in the application. They probably have a pretty good idea of the student's ethnicity, or at least in big, broad categories. If it's an important part of the student's identity, or they're super involved in something that relates to that, or they feel like it's given them a different outlook on issues of the day, then it may be worth mentioning. I don't think you have to avoid it, and I don't think I would go out of the way to put it in there because you think it'll be helpful or not helpful. Bottom line is, you can't try to second guess. I think you can't try and figure out, okay, which is strategically going to be better? Should I be saying this or this? You have to just write a personal statement that is telling them who the student is and who they really are, and not be worried about, well, what if this school doesn't like that? Or what if the school would prefer to hear this? You have to write what's true, because at the end of the day, also, like, you if they would rule you out and put you in the no pile because you did mention it, then that's not a college you want to go to.
Thank you. Jenny, coming from Jenny Shi again, can we talk about Asian hate?
About Asian what?
Asian hate. Hate.
Oh. Sure. I mean, I think you talking about prejudice and bias and discrimination and racism in general, this is like an important issue in America these days. It's a huge issue. I think that if you're discussing that, I feel like it's important to not keep it too focused on, oh, here's, my experience, but look at the big picture. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because here's what's going on in society. This is part of a larger issue. And also, what is the student doing about it? Like, what solutions do they see? What causes do they see? Like, how do they think they can make a difference with that? Whether I wouldn't, again, I would not write about that unless this is a particularly important topic for that student, that they feel like they're an activist. And this is their plan to be an activist on campus. This is something that's important to them. And they spend a lot of time and energy on it.
Okay. All right. This perhaps is the last question. She's asking how to write a University of Chicago essay. How to write a University of Chicago essay.
Oh. University of Chicago always has the most interesting questions. I love their questions, but that's because I'm somebody who enjoys writing. So yeah, they tend to have very creative ones, and I think there's usually a choice, right? That they give you a choice of a number of different and very unusual questions you can answer. I think you can have a lot of fun with it because they tend to ask really offbeat questions. And maybe in some ways it's easier to show your personality when you get to write about something really strange and you're answering a really offbeat question. But you still, no matter what question you're answering, and I don't remember how many questions you have to answer for University of Chicago, but you want to make sure, I'm talking just sort of about personal statement type questions and not the ones like, why do you want to go to our college, or why do you want to major in whatever it is you want to major in? You have to look at the overall picture. So what's the picture you're giving them of who you are? And are you covering like the important pieces of who you are? So if you're answering some offbeat questions, you still want to make sure that the overall impression that you're giving of who you are fits who you are and the impression you want to give. But it's again, with University of Chicago, it really depends on the particular question, and it's hard to make any general statements without knowing what questions they're looking at and their students' background and figuring out how you can find sort of the best way to match up the students' strengths and interests with the questions that they can answer.
Right. Thank you very, very much. I think we had a lot of very valuable information tonight, and we're looking forward, obviously, for your next sharing. Many asking about question about price package and all that. We'll be happy to answer for you one by one. If you want to just either add my WeChat or Allison's WeChat, or just scan the barcode on the right hand side. So we will collecting that information and follow up with you. And thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thanks again, Arienne, for your wonderful sharing. Thank you for your time and expertise and also knowledge, experience to benefiting our student. And thank you very much. And thank you, Allison, for your technical support on the background, as always. Great job. And thank you, everyone, for spending the Saturday night with us. And this is another great session, and looking forward to see you next time. And we're going to leave the screen up for a little bit. Thank you. Thank you, Arienne.
Enjoy your summer, everyone.
Thank you.